Hi everybody, my name is Willow Norton, and I've been doing research on Harry Harlow. So there's not a lot that's actually known about his childhood, and so it was kind of difficult to find information about it. But what I did find was he was a shy and insecure boy, um, but he seemed to have like a sense of humor with that. He said that he joked that he tended to apologize to doors before opening them. Around age 10, he discovered he had a passion for drawing. His father was an unsuccessful inventor, and he remembered his mother as a cold woman. After high school, he did his undergraduate and graduate studies for primatology at Stanford, and he studied under Louis Terman. And then after that, he began doing research at the University of Wisconsin. After grad school, around this time, there was a lot of anti-Semitism, and so he changed his original last name of Israel to Harlow. And around this time, he also married Clara Mears, who eventually divorced him and took their two sons, claiming that he had essentially left them for his work, anyways. After that, he eventually married a colleague, Peggy, however you say her last name. But he was still pretty absorbed in his work. He would get there before the sun rose and be getting home after it set. He was there all the time. He became an alcoholic at some point. I couldn't really figure out when, but he struggled with depression throughout his whole life, and so it's likely connected to that. And then his work as a primatologist led to his studies on the nature of love. Eventually, his second wife, Peggy, was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she passed away in 1971. And during and after this time, Harlow sunk into a deep depression, and he was admitted to the Mayo Clinic in the early 1970s for 59 days, where he received electroshock treatments. And after this, he conducted experiments using his infamous pits of despair, which raised a lot of concern from the public and other researchers. And then he died soon after in 1981 from Parkinson's disease. Kind of a sad life. Learning about his life outside of psychology, outside of his work, was kind of depressing to learn about. But to get into some of his studies, his most famous study is probably this one. It's titled The Nature of Love. And Harlow was really concerned about the philosophy of love in the day and wanted to understand the fundamental building blocks and mechanisms about why love and attachment develop, I guess. And so the philosophy of love in his day was that instead of love, it should be proximity. Like they called it proximity instead of love. And parents should toughen up their children instead of like coddle them, I guess. Something Harlow said bluntly, he put it very bluntly. He said the psychologists of the day not only show no interest in the origin and development of love or affection, but they seem to be unaware of its very existence. And there was this belief that affection was unnecessary and could be harmful in parenting by creating clingy and weak children. A little bit more about the philosophy of love in his day. Um, Psychologists thought that love was based on primary needs, so like hunger, thirst, reproduction, and as such, love and affection would become secondary to that, learned through association with a mother's responsiveness to primary needs. But Harlow didn't like that explanation because it didn't explain why a mother and child have this lifelong connection. Um, and so he decided to do some studies on that. And since he was already a primatologist working with monkeys, he'd observed these monkeys who were being lab raised, clinging to the cloth pads that covered the cages, the floor of their the floor of their cage, um, And then when the cloths were removed for sanitary reasons, they would replace them. The monkeys threw tantrums. And so this led to his studies on the nature of love. So he constructed two surrogate mothers. One of them was made of a block of wood, sponge rubber, cotton terry cloth, and there was a light bulb radiating heat from behind. And the other mother was made of wire and warmed by radiant heat. You can see these in the picture on the right. And Harlow described the first mother as kind of an ideal mother, like a perfect mother. A mother soft, warm, and tender, a mother with infinite patience, a mother available 24 hours a day, a mother that never scolded her infant and never struck or bit her baby in anger. So, what he did, he separated monkeys into two groups. In one group, the wire the wire mother would be the lactating mother. So they attached like a bottle to it, her, and the cotton mother was not lactating. And then in the second group, the cotton mother was lactating, but the wire mother was not. And that they would record how much time on each mother was spent. And this was hoping that the results would show whether the primary drive for mother-child attachment was based on the drive for food or the need for love and comfort. And in the end, the results showed that in both groups, monkeys spent more time on the cloth mother, indicating like the importance of contact comfort. And even when Harlow would introduce fear-producing stimuli, monkeys would seek comfort and safety from the cloth mother, which is really interesting. These experiments became very well known in Harlow's day, became kind of infamous, and Harlow was sought out as an expert in child care. And he was the first and only primatologist to receive the White House Medal of Science. But it turned out that as these monkeys got older, they had some serious issues. They grew up and abused their young, their children, and they lacked basic social skills. And so we kind of figured out that physical care alone was not enough to grow up psychologically healthy. And so this led to a host of other studies incorporating evil mothers, extreme isolation, and eventually the pits of despair that I kind of mentioned earlier. And that's what we're about to talk about. I'm not sure how much detail I'll be able to give on this for sake of time, but essentially, Harlow and another psychologist, they wanted to kind of replicate depression, human depression in monkeys. And so for humans, in this quote on the left, humans report depression. They use the words like they're in the depths of despair or sunk in a well of loneliness and hopelessness. And so they tried to build this instrument, I guess, this construct. Well, that's not the right word. That could hopefully replicate those feelings for the monkeys so they could observe how monkeys responded to depression. And so you can see on the right, they did some for baby monkeys, and they did some for the adults. They had food and water inside, but in the experiment, go to the next slide, monkeys were held in these pits for 30 days, so it was just extreme isolation. And then after these 30 days, Harlow would check on them, and they observed them and found, you can see on the left in this graph, that there was a significant increase in self-clasping behavior and rock and huddling behavior, and a decrease in locomotion and exploration. And so these monkeys were significantly affected by this extreme isolation. And a lot of these behaviors are what we see in young children who struggle with depression. And so his experiments had a lot of criticism, especially like regarding the ethics of the experiment. rightly so. It's really difficult to, I mean, it's really sad to learn about, like, these monkeys who are being tormented. But Harlow had a lot of, I guess, explanations and defenses against this. Um, he had some studies that incorporated like these evil mothers who would, I don't know how the contraption worked, but when the monkey was on the mother, it would like something would come out and stab, not stab, but like jab the monkey. I don't know. Um, and something that he said about this was that if you're going to study love, you have to study love in all of its aspects, claiming that like these type of mothers, evil mothers, exist in nature and in the world, and so you have to study those harder things, I guess. Some of his other defenses, he thought the pits of despair were necessary to underside or to understand the darker side of social vulnerability and isolation. One of his someone he was working with, a psychologist, asked Harlow why they were doing it, and Harlow responded saying, because this is what depression feels like. He acknowledged that these monkeys suffered, but in his eyes, for every mistreated monkey, there are a million mistreated children. If my work will point this out and save only 1 million human children, I can't get overly concerned about 10 monkeys. Which, I mean, it's hard to respond to that, I guess, because there's so many things that are ethically wrong with his experiments. And it's hard to know, like, well, do we use the information that he discovered, I guess? Do we use the results from his experiments? Because a lot of attachment theory is based off of his studies and his work, but a lot of it was unethical. So it just raises such a it puts us in such a hard spot to know, like, well, do we use this? I don't know. But I guess there were a lot of psychologists who were very unethical back then, that put us in a hard position too because we also use their findings. And a lot of psychology is built off of unethical experiments. That's kind of hard. It is really hard. Anyways, that is my presentation on Harlow's life. Pretty depressing, um, learning about all of it. It was, some of it was hard to read, but I'm glad I did. I've learned a lot and I really have enjoyed this class. So thanks for watching.